Okay, Baruch Hashem, we are live on Facebook, and you may be watching this at your convenience on YouTube. This is Parshat Lech, Lecha 5784. I just want to start off with just a few words. I try not to rant and rave, but it's very important, I think, for understanding the purpose of this class in general. And that is, you will always find, if you look hard enough, allusions to the events of what are going on, whether it's the word Hamas or the Jewish year 1948 when Avraham was born, and the year 2023 when he was told to go on his journey, as we'll see in this week's parsha. These are all cute allusions at worst, and at best, they are reminders that everything is in the Torah. There are important lessons to be learned in the Torah, not just cute little hints. You start with hints just to point really to the direction of what you're supposed to do, and that is learn lessons from the Parsha. Each Parsha has multitude of lessons that can be learned, and our goal here in the Parsha class is to, besides give a quick synopsis of the Parsha, to then go a little bit deeper into the lessons that can be learned about the Parsha. Just a moment.
They don't want to advertise anything.
All right, there we go. So with no further ado, let's just get right into the Parsha. H-Shem, we were first introduced to Avram really in last week's parsha just by name. We're not really told much about him, but in this week's parsha, H-Shem tells Avram to travel, to move, and him and his wife Sarai and Lot, and a number of Lot is his nephew, and a number of the people that Avram has inspired, or the souls that Sarai and him made. They're certainly not his children, as we'll see. He is childless for most of the Parsha. They're told to go to another land, the land of Canaan, the ancient land of Israel, and Hashem promises that this land will go to Avram and his children. But immediately, there's a famine, and Avram has to leave. They go to Egypt, where Sarai is taken, and Avram is then given much wealth by Pharaoh. And nevertheless, Pharaoh and his family is stricken with an illness that basically forces Pharaoh to return Sarai and realize that indeed something else is going on, and that Sarai is indeed Avram's wife, and he feels apologetic about it and showers Avram with even more gifts. Avram leaves Pharaoh. They go back to Israel, where Lot and Avram have to split up because Avram and Lot cannot seem to share the same land. Lot goes to Sodom. Later on, there's a war in Sodom, and Avram is forced to rescue his nephew, and then to fight a bunch of countries, really, almost independent of everybody else, single-handedly defeats all these countries, and he is blessed by the coin of Shalem. What Chazal tell us is actually Shem. At this point, he's called Malki Tzedek, and he blesses Avram. Avram gives him Maser, and there's what to say about all of that. I don't think we'll be dealing with it in detail in this year, but if you want to look at previous years of the class, you'll see that we're talking about the actual kahuna, the actual priesthood, which was passed down from father to son, from Noach to Shem, seems to be at this point then transferred over to Avram, and Avram is going to transfer it over to his sons, all the way down to the son of Yaakov, who Levi, who then transfers, who then later on eventually is transferred to Aaron, or Cohen, and is with the Kohanic line from that point on. The Sarai is not able to have a child. She then gives her maid Hagar to Avram. Hagar has a child by the name of Ishmael, and later on, Avram's name is changed to Avraham. He has the command to make a Brit Milah. Sarai is named Sarah, and she's promised to have a child as well. And we'll get more details about that in next week's Parsha in Vayera. So that's a quick summary of the Parsha. And we're going to now do a deeper dive into some of the actual verses, if we may. This is the source sheet that was sent out. And let's see what we can learn from the actual verses. So at an early point in the parsha, Avraham builds a mizbeach, builds an altar, and he builds an altar every time when Hashem appears to him. He seems to build an altar, and this is one of the times that Hashem appears to him. V'yera Hashem el Avram. Hashem made himself visible to Avram. V'yomer lezarecha aten et haaretz zot. And as he does with every single one of his first appearances to the Avot, to the patriarchs, to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and every single first conversation that Hashem has with them, he always talks about, in that first conversation, he gives a promise that the land will go to their descendants, to Avram's descendants, to Yitzchak's descendants, and to then Yaakov's descendants. And so he says, your descendants will I give this land. The even Sham Mizbech. Then he makes a Mizbech. He builds an altar La Hashem, V'nira Alav, Hanira Alav, that was visible to him. Hashem made himself visible to Avram. So this will bring up the obvious question of what does it mean to have Hashem visible to you? Hashem has no physical body. It's one of the Ani Mamins, one of our beliefs that Hashem is not visible. He's always invisible. So what does it mean that Avram saw Hashem and therefore built a Mizbeach? What did he see? What was it? And obviously there are any number of explanations, but I think we should start today with the Meshech Chachma. We'll see, God willing, at the end of the class, we'll have another Meshech Chachma from the end of the Parsha. But let's start here and see what we can learn. So, V'yiven Sham Mizbeach La Hashem and Yira Alav. So what does it mean that he was visible? Ininahu Pi Al Yidei Al Pi Yesh Masha Katuv. So it could be that we can learn something from the verse in Eov. It says, "Umibsari echze Elokai." From my flesh, I see Hashem. In other words, you can look at your own body and see Hashem. What does that mean? Boo. So what this means is lidati ki hanefesh atzmo maskil ruchni masik amitat Hashem yitbarach mitzioto umeoro uchvodo. The body itself contains the spiritual inside your body. You have a spiritual soul that knows and points to and is completely always cognizant of the fact that there is a creator. Your soul knows that. And everybody has a soul. And that soul is always constantly cognizant of that fact that there is a creator. Rak, however, bishvil shemelavush hachomer gas masach mavdil chutzet beino la'aviv shebeshamayim. It's only the physical covering of your body that mutes that somehow covers up the obvious connection between your soul and Hashem. Nachutz lanu haTorah. That's why Hashem gave us the Torah. Shehi kli hamechazeh. The Torah is an instrument that magnifies, and he has in parentheses microscope. The Torah is, and this is already by the time of the Meshech Chochmah 100 years ago, the microscope is not a new invention anymore, right? The Torah is a microscope that helps you understand and see Hashem. L'zakech hachomer ulahasir milvushav hayotzim ad ki yashuv kemo terem havlodo. So the Torah is able to do a very special thing. The Torah doesn't just tell you that there's a God. And this is how I introduced today's class. The Torah helps you see God. What does that mean? Because just like a microscope illuminates, there's something that's already there on the surface. Just you don't see it, right? You look at a microscope. You look through a microscope at your skin, for instance. You'll see all kinds of things that are obviously always there, but you don't notice them. You don't pay attention to them. You don't see the pores on your skin, the hairs, the pores, microscopic dirt you weren't able to wash off earlier or didn't notice. It's still there, whether you see it through a microscope or not. But when you look through a microscope, a whole new levels are introduced. Introduced is the wrong word, right? Because it's there. It's just you're not conscious of it until you look through a microscope. Same thing with Hashem. Hashem is always there and always invisible. Once you open your heart, open your mind to the Torah, Hashem becomes a little more visible. Cleaning the lenses of your physical eyes, you're able to see further and deeper. And that is what's called seeing Hashem. The Meshech Chochmah continues and says that that's exactly what happens to people like Avraham, people who have Ruach HaKodesh, call it Nevuah, whatever it is, that we're not able to necessarily see the obviousness. I'm making up that word, right? The obvious existence of Hashem. His obvious existence is blinded to us by our physicality. So as we strip that away and become more and more spiritually focused, the more we're able to focus in with our microscope into the reality of the spiritual world, that occurrence, that realization, that's called seeing Hashem. And that's what happens to Avraham. And Avram celebrates that event. He marks this event where he is closer to Hashem with building a Mizbeach. And then the question becomes, what do we do when we have this event? What do we do to really crystallize, concretize, these are real words, by the way, to concretize the realization that Hashem is real and not just a figment of our imagination, not just a hologram, not just an image, just not just a picture. He is real. He exists. He's in our lives. When we have these events, when we have these moments, when we realize this, what do we do to set down a permanent record that this is true? In Avram's time, they built a Mizbeach. In our time, we're not allowed to. We can take on an extra mitzvah, change our lives somehow, but it should be something permanent. The exact opposite of what people are telling us to do, some people are telling us to do nowadays when we're looking for something to set up in our minds that we are servants of Hashem. What are we going to do? Don't do something passive. Definitely don't do something that's going to just run with the wind. Right? You need to do something. If you're going to do something, like Avram, if you feel the need, as many people do nowadays, if you feel the need to concretize, to set up a realization point of Hashem, that realization point needs to be something permanent, a mizbeach. Make it a mizbeach. Obviously, I'm not saying you should make a mizbeach. Right? You should do something like what a mizbeach was for Avram. We should do something like that, something that's a permanent setup. That's going to change how we behave and how we react, how we relate to Hashem. That's the Meshech Chochmah. Okay, further on in the parsha, as we said before, Avram is made wealthy by Pharaoh. It says, to be very specific, it says, chapter 12, verse 16, Avram hativ ba'avura, and because of her, because of Sarah, Avram is made very, very, well off. Vehi lo, and what was he given? Tzon, vakar, flocks, and cattle, v'chamorim, v'avadim. He was given donkeys and slaves, v'shifachot, and the maidservants, v'atonot, gumalim, and donkeys and camels, all kinds of good stuff. So he's wealthy, right? And how is he wealthy? He didn't have the stuff before. He gets the stuff from Pharaoh. Very nice. Except for one little problem. Later on, as we said before, he fights a war and he saves the king of Sodom. And the king of Sodom in chapter 14, verse 23, wants to give him lots of wealth. He offers him lots of wealth. And what does Avraham says? No. I don't want anything. Now, I will not take from the thread to your shoelace. I don't want anything. I don't want anything from what's yours. Lo tomar, because I don't want you to say, Ani hasharti et Avram. I'm the one who made Avram wealthy. He goes on to say, basically, the way Chazal understand it, that because Avram is blessed, he doesn't want anybody else's wealth. So says Rashi. I wish I would have had that here. So, but the Emet Liakov quotes it anyway, so we have it. We have it as secondhand information, but you can look it up yourself and see the Rashi there. Rashi zel lashono shakadosh baruch hu haftichani la'ashrani. Hashem promised that he would make me wealthy. Shenamar, as it says in the beginning of the parsha, ve'avarechacha. I will make you wealthy. That's the whole Lech Lecha. Go for yourself, and Hashem blesses him. Everything's going to work out. Ad kan l'shono. U'lechora kasha. Obvious question comes up, as we just mentioned it. Ha kiyam hakadosh baruch hu et hiftachto shel avarechacha al yidei zeh. Hashem promises Avram that he's going to be wealthy. Deha kol haruchush kvar zechu bo kedel omer avarav al yidei kivush milchama. So you could say to Avram, you just won a war. There's a certain amount of wealth that is promised to people who win a war. The loot, the booty, right? You're able to get, it's yours. There are rules of conflict, and when you win a war, you take what's yours. You're allowed that. You're allowed to pay yourself back. You spent certain resources, but even more than that, we can ask. Pharaoh made him wealthy, and that's okay. To take Pharaoh's money was okay. Taking the king of Sodom's money is not okay. Why is one better than the other? So, and like I said, there's rules of war. Near the Avram Savar, Sheyef Osher Zeh Bal Yidei Birkat Hashem. He's going to say, I don't want your money because I'm blessed by Hashem, but this is the reward. Maybe this is the reward. Like that story, the joke that people tell about, the person is being flooded, and he's waiting for Hashem to rescue him, and the helicopter comes, and let's back up. The police come and say, get out, and he says, no, Hashem is going to rescue me. And then the flood starts, and it's ruining the house, and he has to go on the second story, and the ambulance and the military come. They say, get out of your house, it's dangerous. He says, no, Hashem is going to rescue me. And then that floor is flooded, and he has to get on the roof, and already the military is coming in helicopters. Get out, come, we'll rescue you. No, Hashem is going to rescue me, not you. That's wrong. Says, why? When he unfortunately succumbs to the flood and he passes away and he gets to heaven, and Hashem says, why didn't you go? He says, you were supposed to rescue me. Hashem says, I did rescue you. I sent you the police, I sent you the ambulance, I sent you the boats, I sent you the helicopter. That was me rescuing you. That's true. Hashem works through nature and through the people, and that's actually our job. We are the helicopter, we are the police, we are we are the boats. We do that through Hashem works through us. Hashem does the healing through the doctors. That's our job in this world to do. So the wealth that Avram had was from the bracha of Hashem, came true through Pharaoh's money. Well, why not the king of Sodom's money? What's wrong with, what's different? Why is why not even a shoelace, right? What's the difference? So the difference can be found in the pasuk in Mishlei. Pasuk in Mishlei, chapter 10, verse 22, says, Birkas Hashem hi tashir. The bracha of Hashem, that is what makes somebody wealthy. However, v'lo yosif at eitzav imah. It will not cause any pain. Birkat of Hashem, the bracha of Hashem, makes somebody wealthy, but should not lead to anybody else's misery. In Cain, says Rabbi Yaakov, Mekevan shenitbarech mirchush acherim. It's one thing to become wealthy through somebody else's wealth. Efshar, but you're not able. She'al usher zeh kevan hakadosh baruch hu shivtachto alav the al kol panim yesh kan atzavon shel melech Sodom. Where is this money coming from that the king of Sodom is giving you? This is the wealth that he acquired from his people, from his taxation and from robbery and from stealing. There's no way that Avram is supposed to get wealthy from their suffering. It's one thing the king of the king of Egypt had wealth, inherited wealth, prospects of war, etc. But for him to take the wealth of the king of Egypt while the people of Egypt are doing fine, that's okay. But where are the people of Sodom now? They're poor. They just survived the war. They're out. They're out, and they're penniless. And he's going to take the money of Sodom while they're suffering? No. That's not Birkas Hashem. Birkas Hashem, as the pasuk in Mishlei tells us, does not lead to anybody else suffering. And it's easy to apply to what's going on nowadays when people think that the Palestinian people are suffering and Israel is bombing Gaza, etc. How could that be? Well, that can be if their leaders are corrupt. They're doing fine. They're safe, right? They're good and well. Hamas is not. The leaders of Hamas are living pampered lives while the Palestinian people are suffering. So you want to say free Palestine? Free them from Hamas. You'll see a much better. You'll see a much better Palestine, a much healthier Gaza, if their leaders cared about them, if the free water and pipes and everything that Israel gave them weren't used to turn around and make weapons and pipe bombs to hurt Israel, Gaza would be much better off. So that's the idea. That's, again, as I said before, that's some of the lessons we can learn from the Torah about what's going on, not just cheap little, tidbits. Look, the Torah mentions this. No. If the Torah mentions this, it's to teach us lessons about this. So let's learn those lessons. The lesson is you can't benefit while other people are suffering. All right, we're going to continue. Since we mentioned the king of Sodom, there's an interesting Rashi that's worth mentioning about this. So, before the rescue, the king of Sodom needs to be rescued. Why does he need to be rescued? So give me a moment. Sorry, need some air here. Just a moment. Station identification. This would be a good time for commercial. I'm back. All right. So why is it that the king of Sodom needed to be rescued? Because during the process of the war, there are a bunch of wells in this place called Emek Hasidim, the Valley of Sidim. They're running away and they fell into those wells. And then they were rescued. And from there, says Rashi, Be'erod Harbe Hayusham, there were a lot of wells. Benudling Misham Adma Atitsal Binyan. And they were obviously used for practical purposes. Obviously, that's what wells are for. Nobody, the wells weren't natural; they were made. Right? Midrash Agada. So the Midrash says, "Haya hatit mugbal bahem." The Midrash says that the mud was the clay was made special. Nasa neis lamelech Sodom sheyatza misham. It was really a miracle that the king of Sodom came out of there. And why was the miracle accomplished? Lefisha ya beumot muktzatan shelo hayu ma'aminim shenimsal Avram mi'ur kastim. There are certain people in the other nations who didn't believe in the miracle that Avram was saved from Ur Kasdim, Mikivshan Ha'esh, from the fiery furnace. And once this king of Sodom was rescued from there, that's when people started believing the story of Avram. Strange. Rashi's basically saying that Avram's story was so unbelievable, and a lot of people didn't believe it, that he was rescued from there. So you needed the miracle of the king for the king of Sodom to happen, and then people said, if this miracle happened, then maybe Avram's story checks out. Ramban questions this entirely. It sometimes happens. He quotes the Agada. He quotes this Midrash. And he quotes in the name of Rashi. And then he has a question, doesn't really like the Rashi's translation. I'm trying to find the right place. I wonder at this Agada. That the nations didn't believe that this miracle happened for Avram, and now they're going to believe it. Melech Sodom, Amuna Kadosh Baruch Hu Ki Melech Sodom over Avodah Zarah. And how are the people going to believe in the miracle that Hashem did for Avram from this Ovid Avodah Zarah, right? The king of Sodom was not exactly a religious person. How are now people going to believe in Hashem's miracle just because this happened to the king of Sodom? So he has his own different explanation of this miracle, and maybe we'll look at that some other time, some other year. But what I'd really like to focus our attention on is what Yerucham Levovitz writes about this. I know this is hard to read. I'm going to try to make this a little better. It's a little pixelated. I agree. I couldn't find a better source for it. So he quotes the Rashi, then he quotes the Ramban. And then he makes a very important idea. He says a very important idea that I think is relevant to all of us. Amarnu al zeh, we can say from this, who yisod bedvarim, that this is a very important concept in these words. Ki al inyan iamuna, there's a very important concept regarding faith. Umashal hanavi, who ikar mitzad shel adam al nevua al davar pali or machak mitziod. Sometimes you hear some prophecy that's hard to believe, it's unbelievable. V'zeh mitzad iyadanu, and but when it has to do with something that's knowledgeable, something that we do know, something that's possible, let's call it, then it becomes within the realm of belief for a person to believe that Navi. In other words, you'll hear a Navi, you'll hear a prophet say something that's like so just wacky, so like out there. And you're like, that's impossible, that can't happen. But when something somewhat related to that happens, you're reminded, it jars your memory, it jars your thought process. And you begin to think, oh, well, you know what? Well, that sort of thing also happened to so-and-so. And then you begin to think, well, if it happened there, maybe then it is possible that it also happened in this situation. And that's exactly the point of these kinds of miracles. We hear stories that might sound completely unbelievable, even in the news, say. It seems, for instance, that from what I can tell, from what I hear online, that people don't believe that these atrocities that happened on October 7th from Gaza, that they happened. Hamas did what they put it on social media. So how can you not believe that? Well, there's this Israeli deep fakes and et cetera, et cetera. So how do we know? We don't see the pictures. We don't know if we saw the pictures. All kinds of crazy answers to that question. The people who do believe that this happened, who are they? They're not only Jews, right? It seems like all the Jews believe this happened. Zionist, non-Zionist, anti-Zionist, whatever political affiliation you have, if you're Jewish, you believe that this happened. The non-Jews who don't believe it, so they're going to hang on to this belief that it's impossible that somebody would act this barbarically. Who does believe that this happened? Which non-Jews? Is the ones who've seen something like this before. It's within their realm of reality that this can happen because they've seen some sort of barbarism before. They know some of the details of what happened in 9/11, or they know some of the other details of what happened to some of the other hostages in different ISIS, Taliban, Hezbollah situations. They might have experienced it from their own military experience or whatever. And once it's already happened, that's when something like this, when it opens up, the door becomes open to believing that such a thing occurred. And that's obviously this occurred. The only problem is not everybody believes it. Who believes it again? The people who've seen it before. So that's why the Torah has to tell us about this incident with the king of Sodom. This Agadic teaching of that Rashi is quoting is then therefore justified. It's not because, why would it happen to the king of Sodom? He's over Avodah Zarah. So what does it matter? So as Ramban asked, what does it matter that? How is that going to prove that Hashem did it? You know how it's going to prove that Hashem did it? Read a little deeper. It proves that Hashem did it because Hashem does these kinds of things. These miracles do occur. And if they do occur at all, so then it's possible that this backs up Avraham's story. Again, it doesn't really fully justify Avraham's story. It doesn't say, as the Ramban pointed out, it doesn't prove the existence of Hashem, because it could just mean that, quote unquote, the gods, we're feeling comfortable that day. The demigods on Mount Olympus were feeling generous or whatever. That doesn't prove that God did it. But it makes it so that what God did falls into the realm of their worldview. And so that makes it more possible that they'll believe in Hashem's true nature and not in these false narratives of the other gods of the world. Okay. Let's spend a little time discussing one of the major miracles of this week's Parsha, a miracle that we're not usually so accustomed to, and certainly a miracle that I don't think we appreciate enough. Avram and Sarai do not have children. Without giving away too much, they don't have children because neither of them can physically have children. We're going to explain that in some of the commentary that's coming up. In chapter 15, verse 5, 15:5, Hashem Yotze Oto Hachutza takes Avram outside. And the way that it was, we'll see that Chachutza doesn't mean just he takes him like for a stroll outdoors. Chachutza means chutz min hatava. He takes him out of his nature. Look up at the sky. Actually, habetna means look down. But anyway, look down at the sky. Count the stars. If you're able to count them. This is how your seed will be. Your children will be like the stars in the sky. And there's a lot to say about what does it mean he's telling them to count them. He's not able to count them. Or Meir Shapiro says famously, his yahrzeit, by the way, was last week, 90th yahrzeit, I believe, that he was not able to count the stars. Nobody's able to really count them all, but he can start. And this is true about all things. You just start doing it, do your best. Hashem doesn't want necessarily for you to finish and accomplish what he asks you to set out to do. He wants you to set out to do it. Start with that. Somebody else might have to finish it in the end, etc. We know historically certain works like the Ein Yaakov, right? It was started by one person. He wasn't able to finish it. His other people added on to it. His child, his son finished it, or at least some of it, and then other things were added on later on. Okay, but the point is that start and see where it goes. So it says Rashi, he took him outside. He says, he had to take him outside of the tent to show him the stars, obviously. Midrasho, Amarlo, he said to him, say, leave from your nature. Even if the stars are telling you in your according to your nature that you're not going to have a son, Avram, you're right, there won't be a son. Avraham yesh lo ben, but to Avraham there will be a son. You will change your nature, change your name in this case. Sarai lo teled, Sarai will not have a child. It's true. Aval Sarah teled, but Sarah will. Once Sarai becomes Sarah, she will be able to have a child. Ani koro lachem shem acher v'ishtane b'mazel. I will give you a different name, and that will change your mazel. Right. That's probably enough for that. Yeah, so that's from the Midrash. Says the Meshech Chochmah. Told you we'd have another Meshech Chochmah. Go out. Mazel shall go out of your mazel. Avram einu molid. Avram would not have a child. Avram molid ein mazel Yisrael. Sorry. All right. The Nedarim says in 32 that the Jewish people do not have a mazel in particular. They're not controlled by any kind of celestial sphere. That's the simple explanation, right? All other nations of the world are somehow controlled, more or less. The Jewish people have a direct line to Hashem, and so they're not controlled by any particular mazal. Certain individuals might, that's a different story. Ki Yisrael b'chalal einan tachat hamazal, aval mifrat v'sovavim b'mazal. So the klal the entire Jewish people are not controlled by mazel. An individual might. V'zehu av hamon goyim lomar inyan klali u'be'avram zelashono b'tanit shani Moshe. Regard to Moshe, it was different. He was the son of Avram, and even though Avram might have been told that he would not have this child, Kevan, the Rabim Shrichim Lo Kerabim, who v'zeh ein Mazel l'Yisrael ki Yisrael Amar Yomar Kol HaKlal Kulo ki Yidua. So again, because Avram's Mazel was changed, he was able to have a child, and the child was Yitzchak, and Yitzchak would be one of the other ancestors of the Jewish people. Baruch Hashem. Says the Nachalat David, our last source for the day. I'm trying to see if I can blow it up without pixelating it too much. There we go. Okay. So, in what sense did we change Avram's? What did we change for Avram that he was told to go out of his nature? What does that mean? So it says in Nachalat David that Avram's nature wasn't just like a philosophical idea, that he had a different nature. He says here that Avram was born sterile. He might have even been born, according to some opinions, a tumtum, which is where his privates are covered by skin. He was not a man. How that worked with Hagar, I don't know. Not going to get into it. And Sarai was born without the internal apparatus to have a child either. She was born without a womb. Literally did not have a womb. So what had to happen for Avram and Sarah, as opposed to Avram and Sarai, is not just a different nature, like a different name. Hashem literally changed their physical bodies to be able to have these children, right? And what that means for us, so what does it mean that Avraham had to leave something? As Rashi said, he had to leave his nature. He didn't have to leave anything. He was taken out of the family that he was in. It was all of his previous ancestors, says the Nachalat David. All of his previous ancestors aren't counted as our ancestors anymore. He's a brand new creation. Their DNA did not get carried over into ours. Think of it that way. And he doesn't mention DNA. He's like from 400 years ago, but you get the idea, right? That we have a nature and we have a body, and that's, by the way, why when we talk about the Avot, we talk about Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He writes that Shlosha Avot. We don't have to count the 10 generations back to Noach and 10 generations back to Adam, because not Adam, not Noach, neither of them are in our DNA. Only Avram's DNA is ours, because Avram's DNA is brand new. His internal apparatus that he received from this bracha, and Sarai's internal apparatus that she received from her bracha, have nothing to do with any previous stuff. It's a brand new world inside of them. And what they passed over into their children, what we have, is directly from them and not from anything before that. And that's an important concept. Like, obviously, this is not something that we can in any way recreate or redo, right? Once it's done by Hashem, it is what it is. I mean, there's medical procedures and everything else that maybe we can someday get a glimmer of an idea of how Hashem did this. But the fact is that our when Avram left his nature, he left everything in nature. He became a new creation, a new being almost. So nothing of the past, nothing of his ancestors, none of that stayed with him, and he was therefore able to continue and start the Jewish people from that point. And this is always important to remember, especially in times like these. It's always important to remember that although there's some obvious things that have historical precedent, and we have to carry that with us. It's also important to remember that some things are, in a sense, brand new, and we have to deal with the new realities as they come along. But nothing is new for Hashem. Right? Hashem is taking care of everything. Hashem is always in charge, and it's only through this giant miracle that rarely happens. This I was trying to emphasize earlier, that it's a huge miracle that Avram was able to have children, and that miracle is almost like a brand new creation altogether, like a brand new world. And Hashem should continue to give us these kinds of brand new creations and brand new worlds, and we should see huge changes in public opinion, changes in history and in nature, so that everybody can live, God willing, soon, peacefully and without any threat of violence. All right, thank you for joining. And if you have any questions, I'll stop the feed to Facebook. And if you have any questions later on YouTube, feel free to type them in.